Dominic Cummings. A confusing, bewildering mess of ill-fitting t-shirts and tracksuit bottoms. I don't understand him. He claims he wants to tear it all down. One journalist referred to him as an anarchistic technocratic communist. Yet he is propping up the most conservative government we have seen in a while. In an attempt to understand this man, I have to understand his theory. I believe Cummings sees himself as some sort of polymath. In his blog, he regularly quotes scientists, war strategists, and economicists over political thinkers. He would rather think about Bismarck, or Feynman, or Warren Buffett, rather than traditional thinkers like John Locke, Immanuel Kant, or even Plato. In his blogs, he uses the idea of complex system theory, more specifically emergent behaviour. The basic principle is that complex systems work on many individual parts, all making decisions together. Each individual part does nothing alone, but together they thrive, like the internet, the human body, or an ant colony. None of these have a one sole monarch or ruler.
If you look at ant colonies, you have lots of interacting ants, and from this you have emergent behaviours like farming, slavery, and war that you can never predict from a single ant. If you look at the immune system operates with lots of interacting cells.
It is important to note that this does not mean the individual parts are particularly important. If you took a bucket and put all of the chemicals that make a human body, which is possible and would cost mere pounds, in it, and then stirred up, you would not achieve a human. Even if you have all the relevant material to make up the structure, it is the way that the individual parts react to each other that makes the complex system complex. The other important part to note about Cummings' theory on politicians is that he believes they need retraining. Cummings cites a Philip Tetlock study that examines policymakers and political experts' ability to forecast and predict events. Tetlock found that political experts were operating at near chance level in this ability. They were often outclassed by following generalised rules, e.g. predicting there would be no change, or always predicting X. This type of forecasting and predicting is usually done best by unbiased statistic-orientated types, or misfits and weirdos, as Cummings might say. So in his blog, Cummings argues for removal of flashy political figures and the increase of boring, detail-orientated thinkers in Parliament. This is also down to Tetlock, who found that the more media appearances you have, the less likely you are to be good at forecasting, and the adverse is also true. Implying that politicians that crave media attention or put up a bravoistic facade are worse at predicting the future, a skill that is very useful when learning to govern a country. Combining these two ideals, you have a theory that dictates a decentralised technocratic approach to governing a larger body of decentralised scientists and thinkers that are able to react quickly to incoming stimuli in order to predict the best course of action. So far, I don't hate this. Decentralisation is often more of a leftist idea, and a good one at that. Technocracies seem appealing until you think about it for more than a few seconds. With our current state of politics, a detail-orientated scientist could never go up in an election and actually win, even if the boring guy was better. So you need a total overhaul of our political system, or control who runs and votes. So yeah, not good. Another option is one that Cummings seems to really like. It is the option where you hire more detail-orientated and sometimes controversial political aides to each department. The only problem is that having more unelected people into government, even as aides, the less democratic you really are. So that was the quickest look into how Cummings thinks, without going in too deep. But now, time to speculate a bit. Cummings' uncle is the owner of the worst nightclub in the country. Young Cummings, before he flew off to Russia to work on multiple projects, one being an airline company connecting southern Russia to Vienna, which was described as spectacularly unsuccessful. So before then, he worked in the nightclub as a doorman. He was that guy that sat in the corner of the booth and took your money in turn for a stamp on the wrist. This nightclub and the family in general gained a little bit of notoriety as being a little bit hard, as I learnt from a man in Durham that is the same age as Cummings and knew him about town growing up. He said Cummings walked with an air of arrogance everywhere he went. It seems like even from a young age, Cummings loved to feed on the power of people being important near him. And this seems to have continued. Almost everyone except our current Prime Minister has negative things to say about working with Cummings. David Cameron said the man is a career psychopath while he worked for Michael Gove. And Boris Johnson thinks the man is a genius. Either two Tory Prime Ministers have completely different abilities to judge a man's character, or Cummings changed the way in which he acted between the times he worked for Gove and then took over the Leave campaign, or he is both. The irony of Dominic Cummings' political career is everything he does in the pursuit of being anti-elitist. The boisteristic manner in which he runs his departments to weed out people that aren't hard-working enough. The way in which he dresses to actively contrast what a government official should look like. And his views towards the EU, while controversial, are rooted in the idea of decentralisation. He does all these things and claims to want a decentralised government, yet he is aide to the man that has merged the Department for International Development and the Foreign Office and the Cabinet Office, Number 10, and Treasury into another. This is directly at odds with decentralisation and only puts power into the hands of Number 10, into the hands of Boris Johnson, which some say are controlled by Cummings. This video is not an exhaustive look into Dominic Cummings. I have not even touched on how he believes you can learn about real expertise from Brazilian jiu-jitsu, a version of cage fighting that one family ended up shaking up and changing the nature of the game of, or how the government only recently took a decentralised approach to lockdown restrictions, something people had been calling for months. But these are topics for another time. Reading his blog and having an unbiased opinion on the man's theory, I believe the same that I always did about politics, that it's confusing and messy. Cummings leaves himself with no overarching ideology, no way to apply his sporadic theory, just a mess of Bismarck, cage fighting and atomic bombs. If Cummings was a writer or a thinker, or spent most of his time on these thought experiments, then I think it wouldn't be that bad. Like an educational YouTuber or even a TEDx speaker from a software development company that studies the interactivity between plant life and maximizing clicks on an ad, then that would be fine, maybe even engaging. But he isn't. He is in government, and it seems like he does not want to connect his theory to his actions. Either the man does not have as much control as we think, or he is so power hungry that he's willing to give up all his theory and, for want of a better word, morals, for the facade that power brings. Ultimately, Cummings is no different to any other white Oxbridge educated man we see in government today. He is power hungry and narcissistic. He may look totally different, but substantially, he is just the same.